And here they are right here. Basically what they are is some sphagnum moss that's encased in some hardware cloth or garden fencing. And all that is a wire that has like a plastic coating on it right here. I'm going to be using these moss poles primarily to grow my epiphytes, which are vining plants. I got some golden pothos right over here. And I like when you grow these guys on a pole, a moist pole, they're able to root right into the pole, get extra nutrients and moisture, have a much larger root structure, and they start putting out these really nice leaves. Eventually, over time, these vines will be able to put leaves out that are like 2 feet long, and will even have fenestrations very similar to these monsteras over here. For the materials, we're going to need some hardware cloth or garden fencing, as well as something to cut that wire with. An extra pole for added support, and some zip ties, as well as a pot to hold it in place and for the excess water to be able to drain to. And of course we need the moss, the sphagnum moss, and you're going to need something to be able to prepare it in. And to show you the difference between the hardware cloth and the garden fencing, it's got a much larger space in it as opposed to hardware cloth. I prefer how it looks so you can see more of the moss. I already got some moss in there from the other poles that I put together. Just want to put it in, break it up a little bit, and add some water. And then we're going to let this sit in here for a little while so that the moss can actually absorb that water and be nice and moist. I'm just putting a rock on it to keep the moss submerged under the water. And after it absorbs that and it's nice and moist, I'll just drain the excess water out. So I'm going to take my stake and use that as a guide for how long I want the actual moss pole to be. I want to cut it to about the same size as the pole. Straighten it out so it's more level, more flat. Now, how wide this is, the wider that this is right here, you know, the diameter, it's going to determine the diameter of the actual moss pole and how much moss you're going to need to use. I don't need this to be this large, so I'm gonna cut this down into size. I like the width to be between 12 and 14 inches across. So I guess you do need a tape measure as well. I went inside and just counted how many of these spaces I had on my other poles. I know it's 9, so I'm going to trim this up now too. Now I'm just going to start rolling it. And then I'm going to fill this in with the moss. You put the moss in, you don't want to squeeze it or anything. You don't want to compact it. And you just want to start filling it in. Kind of get it together a little bit better. And then use the zip ties to hold it together. And I'm not using a zip tie right at the very top. Going to the next one down, the next space down. And then at the bottom here, I'm going all the way to the bottom. And then start working my way up from each side. Right where I cut them here, I'm going to take that and I'm going to spin it so that that's inside. So I don't want the leaves or anything. This is a little sharp. I don't want the leaves or anything coming into contact with that and damaging the leaves. So I just spin them so that they're facing inward. So as the vine grows into the pole itself actually becomes the pot. So you don't really need a large pot. The pot's basically just so you can put it in place and it can absorb that excess water that's going to flow through the pole. What I do when I'm using a smaller pot like this, I will first put a little bit of rock down there. Just a little bit, just for a little bit of extra weight. Any rock would be fine. And then I'm just using some Miracle-Gro potting mix. Nothing fancy, nothing special, no special mixture or nothing. Like I said, the pole is actually the pot and where it will be getting most of its nutrients and moisture from. Now the stake for some extra support. And just doing the same thing with the zip ties. Trimming them. And again, I'm going to turn that if I can. Yep, turning it right in there. So I don't got to worry about the leaves getting cut or torn on that as they're growing. The reason that I didn't put a zip tie right at the top, which doesn't matter, you can always cut it, it's just plastic. But then as the vine grows all the way up to the top, you can just kind of pull it apart, take another moss pole that you put together, slide it right in there, and then zip tie it together. And now you've just extended your pole, which will allow the vine to continue to grow up it, continuously putting out more mature and larger leaves. And once it gets to the top of this pole, this section, you just cut the zip tie, open it back up, pull it out, cut it, and then you can replant this into a new pot and put another extension on top of this. You will take a larger stake and put a different, you can keep the same stake, but you put another stake in the back that goes up for extra added support. And that's how you continuously grow your vine so that you keep getting larger and larger and more mature leaves. To water them, you can just take a watering can and just slowly add some water at the top, and that water will actually work its way all the way down the pole. And what I like about these, if you don't want to keep up on your watering, or you're going on vacation, maybe you're not going to be around for the weekend, you can just take a water bottle, put some holes into the cap, fill it up, make sure it's dripping slowly, and then you can just set it right in here and it will slowly water that. So you don't have to water it as much, or you don't have to worry about it drying out when you're not going to be home for a few days.